Here we go. Hello. Thank you. Sorry. Thanks for the patience here. I believe you guys can see me now. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you for joining me today for this live session. I have a couple updates that I want to go over with you guys, and we usually have such a great questions from those sessions. So I'm going to allocate more time today for Q&A. So if you have questions about the topics that we're covering or regarding anything else on the immigration field, Canadian immigration field, please feel free to text them and post them below, and I will do my best to try to go over all of them before we end our talk today. Okay. So again, thank you for joining me. This is Jane Viana, your regulated Canadian immigration consultant here with VisaPlace in Toronto, Canada. So guys, a couple of things happened this month. Immigration has released, a lot of new programs opening up. We had draws happening on Express Entry. We are expecting to have a draw happening today as well. Let's see. Hopefully, what happened before we end our session is already noon, so usually in the morning, but nothing yet. And we also had changes regarding the entry restrictions for Canada. So I want to go over those changes as well. I'm sure that many of you may benefit from the changes on the exemptions for entry to Canada, right? So extended family members are not being allowed to enter as well. And I have so many clients calling to inquire about that, looking for an opportunity to join their families in Canada, and the restrictions are pretty strict earlier, and they are a little bit better now and more extended now. So we'll go over those details as well. So again, please feel free to text me your questions, and I'll try to go over them before we end our talk today. Okay. So the first topic I want to talk about is the parental sponsorship program. Right. It opened on October this month, the 13th of October. It will remain open until November 30th, right? So we have about 2 weeks to submit your expression of interest if you're looking to sponsor your parent, right? A couple of things changed with regards to the parental sponsorship program compared to last year. We used to work on a first come, first served basis. This year, the program was returning to a lottery system, which a lot of people don't like. The first come, first served basis wasn't, ideal either, but the lottery system is a little bit more out of our control in terms of trying to get an invitation for the parents, right? So essentially, for those who are not so familiar with the parental sponsorship program, you need to first submit an expression of interest, right? Interest to sponsor. As a sponsor, you need to make sure that you are eligible. That would include meeting the eligibility requirements and being able to meet the minimum necessary income, as we call, and be able to provide proof of income, right? So it's important that you have the right documents to prove that you earn the minimum income in order to be able to sponsor your parents, and that amount would depend on the size of your family, on your family size, right? So larger families naturally would have a larger threshold in terms of income. Right, if you want to know what's the minimum necessary income for your particular family size, you have to look at a couple of factors all together. So the best thing to do would be book a consultation so we can look at your situation on a more individual basis. But that's essentially what's involved, right? Have to meet the requirements. The requirements, of course, need to be 18 plus. You need to be a Canadian citizen or a Canadian PR. You need to be physically present in Canada. You need to have filled your taxes in Canada for the last 3 taxation years. So you need to have your notice of assessment for those 3 last years. And you need to meet the minimum necessary income, essentially. So if you meet the requirements to be a sponsor and you are invited, if you are selected based on the lottery system, that's when your parents would have the chance to finally submit their immigration application, right? So that's when you move to the second stage of processing. Again, the program usually opens in January, early in the year. This year, it was pushed to April, and in April, we had COVID, so things got postponed a little longer, and it's finally opening now in October. So at least we know the program will open this year, which is great. Usually 20,000 invitations are allocated for this particular parents and grandparents program, so these 20,000 invitations will be issued. Great opportunity for those who are eligible to sponsor and you want to take a chance to perhaps bring your parents or grandparents to Canada. Right now is the time. you have still another week to get to submit your interested sponsor, and definitely don't want to miss out on that, right? Okay, questions about the parental program, text them below and we'll go back to this topic if we need. Okay, with regards to the entry restrictions, we know that since March, only direct family members were allowed to enter Canada to reunite with their family. Now the government has extended those exemptions a little bit. So even if you're not legally married to your partners, or if you're not yet on a common law, necessarily a legal common law partnership, if you've been on a dating relationship of at least a year and you have seen your partner at least once within that year, you may be eligible to qualify to come in as a partner, so as a loved one as well, which is great. I've had countless clients that were not necessarily common law partners yet, or they not ready to get legally married yet, or they didn't have the chance for whatever reason, but they were in a committed relationship with their partners in Canada, and really heartbreaking to see people not be able to join their loved ones. Now, with exemptions being a little bit more flexible, a lot of families, a lot of couples will have the chance to get together, which is great. The exemptions were also extended to non-dependent children. So, if you're an adult child, you'll be able to join your parents as well, and parental, grandchild and grandparents as well, also exempt, and siblings. Right, so siblings weren't part of the exemptions before. Now, if you have a sibling in Canada, you can be allowed in to reunite with your siblings as well, which is great. Right, so if you're in any situation of that nature and you want to know what you need to do and what's the procedure to enter Canada right now, you have to look at the requirements more closely. But in a nutshell, you need to be in Canada for a minimum of 15 days. So if you're planning on a short trip, you need to be for central purpose still. If you're coming in just to reunite with a family member, 15 days is the minimum, and you need to have a quarantine plan, right? There's no exemption for that unless it's essential purpose, right? So you're not coming just to reunite with your family. You do have a non-discretionary purpose for travel, okay? On that matter, you can also make, as of now, what we call a compassionate request to enter if you believe you have compelling enough reasons to be in Canada, right? So maybe, compassionate reasons can also be seen as a valid exemption, but of course you need to have that well documented in order to make a point and justify to the visa officer why you should be, CBSA officer, why you should be allowed in, right? You need to, those who are coming in under the compassionate relief or request, you need to get a authorization from the Public Health Agency in Canada as well before you travel. Right, so you need to get that pre-approval before you can seek entry to Canada. But nonetheless, we'll see that there's more room now to argue why the reasons why you're seeking entry to Canada should be considered. Right, so it's definitely good news. Finally, on that topic, as of October now, international students attending designated learning institutions, so colleges or universities in Canada that have been approved as being COVID ready, or if they have a readiness plan, as they call, would also be allowed to enter. Right, so this is not for every international student. You need to make sure that your school, your DLI, your designated learning institution have been approved as COVID ready. And if that's the case, some students would be allowed to enter as well, which is great. We know that January intake it's coming, and a lot of students are anxious to know what will be the procedure when the borders will be open. So that's good news as well. Right. Okay. Now let's talk a bit about express entry. And again, your questions about entry topics that I talked about in the beginning, feel free to text them below, and I will revisit them before the end, okay? Before we end today. So express entry, or as I said, we are hopefully having a draw today. Our last draw this month, the first draw of the month was October 14. The CIS at that point was 471. We had 4,500 invitations issued on that draw, which is slightly larger than usual, which is good. Nonetheless, was a fairly high CRS still, 471. So that's what we have for now. Let's see where if any CRS changes would take place with the upcoming draw, hopefully today or within the week. On October 15, we also had the Ontario Tech Draw. So that's, OMP related stream, so an Express Entry linked provincial nomination program, right? It's called the Human Capital Priority Stream. I believe we have around 772 to be exact, candidates that were invited under the tech draw. And that stream, of course, it targets tech related occupations, right? So on that particular draw, we had 6 tech occupations that were targeted, including things like software engineers and designers, IT managers, web developers, and other IT related occupations. If you guys if you're aware of your NOC and you want to know exactly what NOCs have been invited, the NOCs for that particular tech draw were 0213, and that's managerial. And then we had 2147, 2172, 73, 74, and 75, right? So tech related occupations, right? It was very nice to see the OM's tech stream being active because it's a very popular stream for Ontario as well. Another somehow surprising update that we had yesterday is that IRCC announced that the CRS would now allocate 50 points rather than 30 points for bilingualism, right? So that's, 50 points, a lot of points. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. And, the same points that you get for a Canadian job offer, right? So this is absolutely great news for those who are bilingual, even if French is their second language and you speak, both English and French as a second language. This is great if you speak both languages. It will significantly impact one's CRS overall, if you're able to get the 50 points for bilingualism. So, if you're, even for those who perhaps are not yet fluent in French, but are looking or willing to increase their CRS by learning French, this is great news as well. It's another strategy that one can pursue in order to increase their CRS and make sure that their profile is competitive enough, right? Or is becoming more competitive as we go. Okay, so yeah, great news. We're just announced yesterday. So okay. This is what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to take a look at the questions now. So if you haven't posted them yet, make sure to do, and I'll try to tackle as many as I can today. Okay, perfect. So can you explain the investment track, please? Okay, investment, good question. So Quebec still has an investment program, and many provinces would have business-related streams, but we no longer have a federal investment program for Canada, right? Now, most of the options that we have, the vast majority, with Quebec being the exception, would require a business person to be actively engaged with the management of their business in Canada. So we still have business opportunities or programs that or strategies that would benefit those who have business management experience or are looking to establish a business in Canada. There are several ways that you can pursue that, but we no longer have a passive investment track for immigration. Okay, if you are a business owner or if you're looking to start a business in Canada, we have to do a more detailed assessment on your case. So if this is fixed to you, make sure to book a consultation with us and we'll talk a little bit more in more detail about it. But there are certainly ways to benefit either through the express entry system or through business-related streams that the provinces still have in place. Okay, pretty much every province or the majority of the provinces would have at least one business-related stream, which is really good, with different levels of investment, right? Of course. Spouse visa for Canadian process time due to COVID-19. Spouse visa, I'm assuming you're talking about sponsorship. Sponsorships inland, they are still taking about 12 months, so around a year if you're inland, for those who already applied or applied recently. Those who applied after March 2020, then sure, you would probably experience a bit of a delay there, but it's really hard for us to know exactly how long it's taking because it's the government. So I'll say allocate a little bit more time, and you can expect some delays, but for spousals shouldn't be nothing that will cause a big impact, hopefully. Which provinces are best to get PR for chefs after studying 2 years on a culinary program in Canada? you have to look at the provincial nomination programs and see, if a chef is listed in any of the in-demand occupations of a given province, or if a specific province would have a more well-designed or more set plan or immigration plan for those to study and work in the province, right? Immigration to Canada, the vast majority of immigration to Canada is employment-based, right? So it's economic class. It's based on work that you're accumulated in Canada, or your work experience that you accumulated abroad. So you should look, what I'm trying to say is that you shouldn't look only to study in Canada, but also, what kind of work experience I will be able to accumulate once I graduate, and how would that impact my chances of getting PR, right? So I think those who are considering studying in Canada, it's very wise to choose carefully the province that you decide to study right? Because that can impact how soon you can get PR and how competitive it will be for you to get PR. I'm not saying that one province is better than the other. It needs to make sense with your study plan, what kind of field you're focusing in, and what's the labor market of that particular occupation on a given province or city. But this is definitely something you want to look at closely, right? Yeah, of course, the big centers, the big cities like Toronto, Vancouver, even Montreal, those tend to be more competitive, of course, because there's a larger number of students and workers focusing on those places. But nonetheless, very much possible. We have a lot of clients that immigrate through provincial programs in Ontario, but we also have, attractive programs in other provinces outside of Ontario and BC. Okay, if I go to Canada on a visit visa, can I apply for jobs and get a work permit? In principle, yes. In principle, if you have a valid job offer that is LMIA exempt or supported by an LMIA, you should be able to get a work permit after that. But it is a better idea to come into Canada with the right visa already, right? Especially now that the borders are closed for visitors. So for those who are looking to come in just to visit, it's not going to be feasible at the moment. Hello, I live in LA and I have reservations to visit my sister's family in Vancouver. Am I considered extended family member and I need a visa? If you need a visa, I don't know, because that would depend on your passport, the passport you hold. If you are an American citizen, then you don't need a visa for Canada, but you need to get, but you do, you are in principle would be exempt from the travel restrictions and you should be able to enter. But you need to be, prepared with the quarantine plan and everything that we talked about earlier. So I think, the answer is positive here on the answer for your question is probably yes, but you want to look at the details as well. But yeah, you should be able to. Hey man, I'm from Bangladesh. I'm doing graduation in English. I want to come to Canada for my master's. Could you please suggest what to do now? Absolutely. Book a consultation with us. We'll assist you in getting a study permit and you should be able to pursue your master's in Canada. Yeah. Can you tell me how a beginner can start express entry? My score calculation is 434. Could you please guide me? Express entries can be a little bit more complex than it seems at first. So it's not something that we can casually talk about it. We need to look at what your credentials are, what your work experience is, and then we can strategize on how to increase your score. Okay. So I'll need to look into in more detail. I am 21 years old and I live in Japan. How can I immigrate to Canada? There are several options for you, right? Young professional looking to immigrate to Canada can pursue many different routes, right? Depending on your work experience, you can look at express entry. If you don't have enough qualifying work experience yet, we can look at a study and work program. So yeah, definitely possible, but best advice I can give here is book a consultation, talk to us, and we'll help you, assist you on designing that immigration plan. Will the CRS drop in the common draws? I hope so. I do hope so. With the fall and winter coming, we're hoping to see at least a slight decrease in the CRS cutoff, but it's a little hard to predict. All I have is speculation. We don't have any inside information, so hopefully will decrease. But Canadian immigration is very competitive, and the best thing to do is work on increasing your CRS, and don't over rely on the fact that the CRS will decrease or not. All right, because it may decrease, but you're better off by making sure your profile is solid. How long does it take to sponsor minor children for Lebanon? It should take about a year as well after you submit your application to sponsor them. Can someone that got deported on a resident permanent from Canada due to criminal offense go back after 5 years? You could, it's possible, but you have to look at, what kind of procedures will need to take place here before we can re-enter Canada, right? So depending on the criminality, you need to be rehabilitated. You have to apply for that first. And then depending on what type of relationship you have in Canada, maybe you have a family member in Canada that can sponsor you, or if you're looking to immigrate as a skilled worker. So we have to address the criminality first before we can look at any potential avenues for immigration, okay? 5 years is the time that needs to elapse for you to be able to be eligible to apply for rehabilitation, but doesn't mean you're rehabilitated then, okay? So you have to submit an application. My brother would like to sponsor my mom to be a PR in Canada. My mom is already in Canada on a visitor visa. How does that work? A good question. So, you can have an intent to immigrate or to sponsor someone for permanent residency and be in Canada as a temporary resident at the same time, right? They won't necessarily overlap. So as long as he maintain her temporary visa valid, that could be a TRV or super visa, she should be fine, and you can go on and pursue the immigration avenue for her as well. Okay, make sure you maintain the valid temporary status throughout the whole process, but one shouldn't overlap the other, shouldn't affect the other. Okay. Is it possible to get a job offer from electronic engineers from outside Canada? Yes, it's possible. Absolutely, but you need to have an employer that is on board with you, right? How long does it take to get a student permit and work permit for the spouse for international students? It depends on the visa application center that you're applying to. So that would depend on your location, right? Depending on what country you're applying under, they will have different processing times. I want to say the majority of applications can take anywhere from right now 2 months to 3-4 months even. But again, that depends on the visa application center that you're applying to, because those study permits are processed outside Canada, not inside Canada. I am from Egypt and I want to apply for TRV when it opens from Italy. I have tourist visa, but I'm not a PR of Italy. Can I apply for a Canadian tourist visa, or should I return to Egypt and apply from there? In principle, you can. You don't have to return. In principle, you can apply whatever you are currently residing. The visa application center will be the one closest to you. So that might not be the same of your country of nationality, which is less than ideal. Usually it's best to try to use the visa application center close to your country of nationality. But if you are residing outside of your country of nationality, then you can apply there as well. And that can also work. My country is Bangladesh. Is Canada visa open in this country? The borders are closed, but we don't discriminate against specific countries, right? So it's essentially closed for everyone. If you got PR from PNP, if we got our PR from a PNP program, can we move to another province? Is that possible? How many years does he have to stay in a current province? Good question as well, and that can be a bit of a sticky issue. If you immigrate through a provincial nomination program, you are essentially signing a contract with that province, and you make a commitment with that province to stay there, and that's why they're endorsing you, right? So there is an expectation that you would remain in that province where, and will at least try to settle there with your family, right? There is a clear expectation that that's going to be the course of action. Now, once you become a permanent resident, you do have mobility rights, right? So the government's not going to necessarily prohibit you from moving around, but you can have issues the moment you try to renew your PR card or apply for citizenship and whatnot, if they question that your intent was from the beginning not, genuine, right? So if you apply for a provincial nomination program with the clear intent of not settling there, that can become problematic. But at the same time, if you try to settle there and you try to find work, you try to adjust, and for whatever reason that didn't happen, you had to move, that's a different story. But in principle, you need to have that intent to reside there, right? That's where the province is endorsing you. So it's a both two-way street here. I hope that answered the question. As a U.S. citizen, can I apply for a job within Canada without PR? Yeah, in principle, you can as well. You can apply for jobs in Canada. You'll be here as a foreign worker, temporary foreign worker. U.S. citizen can benefit from a lot of the NAFTA provisions, NAFTA programs as well. So yeah, you can. Are there other ways to stay in Canada and work in Canada if you have finished a designated learning institution study program as an international student but do not PHWP? I'm assuming you're talking about the postgrad work permit. So I'm assuming that you graduated but you don't have a postgrad work permit. It's not clear to me the situation here, so I'm just going to skip this one because several other questions coming through. Thank you, guys. Would be a draw today at what time? I hope so. We are expecting to have one, but I don't know when. Hopefully before the end of the day. Can a study visa get processed in a length below 3 months? The application deadline of Mexico is January 18. Yes, for those looking to come in for January, it is a bit tight, but I think you may still have time depending on your visa application center again, and depending if you have already done your biometrics, maybe you have done your medicals. So January, it is a bit tight, but I would say yes, there's still a chance you can get it. But you should also reach out to your school and make sure that if you're not able to get it for January, you'll be able to postpone your intake date for maybe May or March or later, before September or up to September, which is the major intake of the year. Can you state the requirements for express entry, please? Okay, very briefly, express entry will be looking at your work experience. So you need to have at least 1 year of work experience. We're looking at your education. So the higher your academic credentials are, the better for you. We'll be looking at your language ability. So if you speak both English and French, that's great if you're bilingual, but you don't need to speak both languages. If you speak only English or French, you're also eligible. The higher your language bands, your bands on the language exam, the more points you'll get. But the language is a big deal on express entry. And the last main factor would be age, right? So your age would also interfere on how many points you get. After 30, 29 plus candidates start losing points per year of age. So, the younger you start the process, the better in terms of points. But of course, if you're, over 30, over 35, over 40, it's still possible to immigrate to express entry, but you would want to work on ways to, overcome the shortage of points due to age. So to sum up, work experience, education, language ability, and age. Those are the 4 most important factors. Things like having family in Canada, having a job offer in Canada would also affect your points. But those 4 factors are definitely the main factors. Can I apply for PNP without IELTS? There's so many provincial nomination programs, right? Not all of them would require a language exam. If it's an employment-based PNP or employer-driven stream, then you may not need a language exam. But if it's express entry linked PNP, then IELTS would be required. Language is a big deal for immigration. So I get this question a lot, but there's really no way you can avoid taking the IELTS exam or the CELPIP exam in order to establish that you have sufficient language ability. So the answer is there are PNPs that don't require language, but if it's express entry linked, then it will require. I am in Pakistan. I have a digital skilled freelancing. How is it possible for skilled freelancers to immigrate? It does complicate things a bit if you are a freelancer, right? If you're a self-employed professional in general, if you're unable to produce an employment reference letter, then you're looking at, providing a lot more documents to establish that you are actually a skilled worker. It's possible, but it's something that you have to look more carefully at, okay? What are the ways to increase your CRS score apart from language ability and work experience? Having family in Canada is a way. Your education, increasing your education, studying in Canada is a very common path to increase your CRS as well. So especially if you're a family, if you're coming in as a couple, while one is studying, the other one is able to work. And that's really probably one of the most popular strategies to increase your CIS. But as we went over a minute ago, the four main factors in express entry will be work experience, language, age, and education. So it's kind of hard to avoid those, right? Or to think of strategies that are outside of that scope. But yeah, education would be the other. I imagine a family is not something you can really change. So education would be the one factor that you didn't mention here. And of course, there are provincial nomination programs, right? Getting a PNP through an express entry linked program can give you an additional 600 points. That's pretty much virtually a guarantee of receiving an invitation. And most of those provincial nomination programs, they are express entry linked. They are based on an in-demand list of occupations, right? So it's employment or work experience related in a way. My fiance applied for a tourist visa and is just doing her biometrics now, tomorrow. Can she change to spousal visa? When you say spousal visa, I'm assuming that's a spousal sponsorship. It could be a dependent work permit or a dependent type of visa. It's not clear to me, but if it's a spousal sponsorship, then it's not really a change. It's rather submitting a new application, right? Because the tourist visa is an entry visa, would allow her to enter. But if she's looking to get Canadian immigration status, then you have to apply for an immigration program, right? So it's two separate individual applications. Sorry, to clarify my earlier question, I was wondering if there's any other ways to stay in Canada after I finished my year-long study program at a DLI, even though it wasn't a program with a PhD, postgraduate work permit option. You have a couple of options here. If you finish a one-year DLI program and you want to remain in Canada, my first advice here would be enroll in a new program that is post-graduation work permit granted, right, or related, or that would allow you to apply for a work permit after. One of the main advantages of studying in Canada, if you're looking to stay and immigrate, is to get the post-graduation work permit. So before you do anything or change of status, my advice would be pursue another program and make sure that that program would allow you to get a post-grad work permit afterwards. If you don't want to do that, then you can look at getting an employer-specific work permit, but for that, you're going to need to have an employer on board to sponsor you, right? So that's also an option. If you don't have an employer that's ready to apply for an LMIA, or if you're on LMIA exempt type of work permit that you can stay in Canada and work, then moving or extending your stay as a student and then getting the post-graduation work permit would be the best course of action. And of course, you can also go from student to visitor status. As a visitor, of course, you cannot work, you cannot study, and you can only stay in Canada for 6 months at a time, right? If it's approved, so you need to have a good reason to remain in Canada as a visitor after your studies, right? If you're not going to be working or having any sort of work permit. So that's why I think going back to school and getting a program that would actually allow you to remain as a worker afterwards, it's probably the best course of action here. But again, this is a general comment. I don't know what's your particular individual situation, so that could interfere on what would be the best course of action for you. Depending if you're with family, if you're by yourself, depending on age, depending on the field of study, is this your first degree or you already have another degree from back home that you're accumulating points with? So depending on what's your situation on this with regards to the CRS, right, do you have a fair chance to get an invitation sometime soon? Yes or no? So all those factors need to be looked at in order for us to know, okay, this is the best course of action or not. What is the processing time for Express Entry right now? After getting invitation to apply, I will be applying for Pakistan. Usually Express Entry, after you receive an invitation, if your paperwork is done properly, you can expect to hear back from anywhere between 6 and 9 months. Right now, those processes are moving a little slower because people are not really being able to land in Canada due to the border restrictions, but it should be, within 6 to 9 months, I want to say. I'm in Canada I'm Canadian living abroad. I applied for a visitor visa for my minor children and got refused. What are the chances if I reapply? You are Canadian. So if you're a Canadian citizen and you have kids abroad, depending on your situation, they can already be considered Canadian citizens by descent. I'm not saying that they are. You have to look at your situation and their situation too. So that's a possibility, something to look at, if they are already Canadian citizens by descent. If they're not, and or you want them to come on a visitor visa and you aren't able to get it, the best thing to do would be to reapply with the right legal assistance. I say this because whenever we're applying to visit Canada and there is a family relationship already involved, it could be because you're married to a Canadian citizen and you're trying to get a visitor visa for Canada, or you're a child of a Canadian citizen or Canadian PR abroad, and all those things. There are more details to be looked at. It's not a simple TRV, right? Because your intent is certainly being questioned, considering that you have close family members, they are Canadian or are in Canada at the time of applying, right? So just filling out the forms and putting together the documents from the checklist is oftentimes not enough. You need to have a good submission letter. You have to have a good explanation letter for what's going on. And of course, if you work with a legal professional, we're able to position your case within the legal framework that is relevant for your context. So that can make a big difference, right? So my advice here is reapply, but don't just reapply. Don't do the same thing again. Reapply with the right legal assistance, okay? We are, of course, happy to help. So if you want to talk more about it, just book a consultation and we'll look at moving forward with that, okay? Okay, can a person ensure that you get to enter Canada once they arrive? Okay, some questions are a little bit too complex to tackle right now. If a person has 2 masters, will this give more serious weight on points? Unfortunately, no. So if you have 2 masters, you're probably going to get points as a master's, which is pretty good, but having 2 masters won't change your CRS, unfortunately. Will Alberta open their PNP for Express Center for candidates not residing in Alberta or Canada? We're not sure. Hopefully, I know they have a program that it's open for abroad candidates, but we don't know when it would open. If a person comes to Canada for a PhD with their family, would the Canadian government facilitate child education? Yes. If you're in Canada as an international student or as a foreign worker, your children, your minor children, are able to attend Canadian primary and secondary school at no additional, not paying international tuition. So yes, you would be able to, your children will be able to attend Canadian public school if you were in Canada as an international student or as a foreign worker, okay? If they are, that's for primary and secondary education only, does not include college, university, right? Not post-secondary. And if they're over 18, you want to get them a study permit. If they're under 18, they can, if they're minors, they can attend school without a study permit. But if they are 18 plus, or if they're, I would say if they're 15 plus, if they're close to 18, you want to get them a study permit as well, okay? And that would facilitate their transition to post-secondary studies once the time comes, right? So if they're coming in for like final year of high school, why not? It will have a much better transition to post-secondary if you already come in with a study permit. But if they're very young or going to primary school, then they don't need a study permit. Just a TRV would suffice for them to attend school. You'll be required to prove that you have your status, though. I am from India. When I'm applying for jobs in Canada, I'm asking if you're eligible to work in Canada. What answer can I give to that question? Well, if you're not a Canadian PR, if you don't have a work permit, an open work permit for Canada, then the answer is no, right? In order to be eligible to work in Canada, you need to have some sort of work authorization, or you need to be a Canadian PR citizen. And work authorizations can be either open or closed, right? Examples of open work permits would be the post-graduation work permits for those who graduate and then apply after, or you can have a spousal open work permit if your partner's coming in to study and you get a dependent open work permit. There's bridging open work permits. There's a couple of examples of open work permits, and we also have employer-specific work permits. That's when the employer applies on your behalf to validate the job offer, either through an LMIA, positive LMIA, or an LMIA exemption, right? And then you have an employer-specific work permit, and of course that means you can only work for that employer on that given capacity. When can we expect a CEC draw? We don't know if they're going to go back to doing CEC exclusive draws, right? As of now, the last couple of draws, they have been general for all programs, which is good. But I know that for those who are in Canada, and I say this back in March, back in July, that for those who are in Canada, it's, that was a great time to take advantage of the low CRS if you're in Canada and you're eligible under CNC. Situation is quite unpredictable still, and there's a chance that they may have another or more draws. They're targeting mostly CC or exclusive CC, Canadian Experience Class candidates, but we don't know when or if that would happen. Unfortunately, we have to keep an eye open for that and see what happens. Okay, guys, this is going to be all for today. Thank you for all your questions. You make this a lot more dynamic, and I hope I was able to at least answer some of your questions. Sometimes it's hard to be super precise because I don't have all the details that I need. So again, the best thing to do is to book a call and you have 30 minutes just to talk about your case, answer all your questions, and really help you identify what will be the best course of action and design a roadmap for you in terms of your immigration plan. Okay, so don't hesitate to contact us if you have questions, and I will see you again maybe next month. If you have some big changes, I'll make sure to come in and announce them for you as well. You guys have a great rest of the day. Stay safe, and bye-bye.